in my experience, people who have become Christians from other faith, you see a general pattern. They come to a point when they're very tired of performing. Yeah. They are very tired of fulfilling rituals. They feel empty. They're not sure what's going to happen to them when they die. And when they find the gospel of grace, the idea of that there is a righteous God who's pure and absolutely holy, and we cannot please him through our any best efforts that we can. But then he loves us not because we are worthy of love, but he loves us because he's love. And he shows his love to us through his son Jesus Christ. And how Christ comes to this world to be with us, to die for our sins, and he offers this free gift of salvation. So that is like, that changes your approach to life. Then you approach good works, and you approach Christianity, you approach the 10 Commandments, the moral law, with a very different mindset. You feel secured.
In view of God's mercy.
Yes.
We're here in Thailand with Theo Global. I'm Adam Smith. I'm the director of Theo Global. And we've been gathering this week with scholars and professors from around South Asia. We're here today with a special guest. This is Vijai Tagore from India, and also, of course, our founder, editor-in-chief, Michael Horton. We're here with the opportunity to talk with Dr. Vijai and just hear some of your thoughts, learn a little bit about what theology is like in your area, in your parts of the world. Would you just take a few minutes and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Adam, and thank you, Dr. Horton. My name is Vijai Singh Tagore. I come from northern part of India, born and raised up in a state called Uttar Pradesh, which is the largest populated, probably, state on the planet Earth at present. Grew up as a church-going Christian, but never experienced Christ until I was at a Bible college. So I'm lecturing in the New Testament at present at a Presbyterian Bible college in Dehradun, which is up in the north. And we have been there, my wife and I, for almost close to 2 decades. We served together at the college.
That's great. And you did your PhD study. Tell us a little bit about what you studied and what you wrote about and where.
Yeah, so I did my PhD in Australia in a Presbyterian college. The topic was 1 Corinthians chapter 11. The issue of head covering. Why? Because it's a very culturally relevant practice in our place. And I saw my mom wearing a head covering while she was going to church. I don't think people really understood what it symbolized. And then gradually, when I was at a Bible college, that particular lack of clarity about why people were practicing, or women were practicing head coverings, why some churches were requiring, some churches were not requiring, then changes in the culture. You would see that head covering was very much limited to the rural parts of India, whereas in the cities, women were not wearing head coverings anymore. Also because both in Hinduism and Islam, head covering is common in India and it represents different things. So within the church, the common view was that it is to honor God. So I just wanted to explore further. I tried to find any academic work, any popular articles that were available on it. I came up with 1 or 2, but nothing at an academic level. Nothing which had done like a serious theological, exegetical study of that passage from the Indian perspective. So
it filled a niche.
So that's something. But then when I was digging deeper into that, I realized this passage is pretty common within the gender debate in the West, but also was used in the East, like within our own theological circles. So that helped me to, all right, this is something worth doing. And when I was exploring, I ended up defending the traditional position, believing in the gender roles, the creation gender roles, defending the historic position of Christianity. But also I was able to see that within the changing cultural roles of men and women in India, how this truth can be implied in various situations. So my end was, this is a practice and a principle, two realities we see here. And I see very strongly, the conclusion came to that the principle is actually more important. It is transcultural, and it can be expressed in different cultural settings, in different ways.
We've been talking about justification. I didn't know so many papers were going to be on justification.
Yeah.
It really is the whole panoply of the blessings we have in union with Christ, but a lot of papers on justification, which is great, especially in a Hindu context, where the idea of karma is so ingrained in the culture. I would imagine some Christians still think in that, especially with the prosperity gospel and everything. Some Christians might think in terms of, if you do enough good, comes back to you. If you have enough faith, you get this. How would you talk about the doctrine of justification in your particular context?
Yeah, very good question. So you rightly pointed out India being the majority Hindu population, and Hinduism representing almost 80% of our population at present. There are 4 or 5 major religions in India. So we have Hinduism, Islam, Sikhism, Buddhism, Jainism, and of course Christianity, which is, according to the government statistics, is like 2.3%, including the Catholics and the Protestants together. But culturally, all these religions, or if you see historically, if we look at how these religions have functioned, every religion is very much based upon work-based merit when you talk about salvation. Of course, not just their understanding of sin is different, not just their understanding of God is different, but every religion has something very common, which is that you got to do something to be pleasing to God. So whether you want to get God's favor, to get your prayers answered, or whether you want to get your sins forgiven, you need to contribute something. So the idea of justification is like a liberating idea. Having said that, the kind of Christian environment as a child that I grew up, I heard a lot of legalistic approach to Christianity. So I grew up believing that God was more like a strict disciplinarian, and unless you keep all of his rules, he won't love you. So I was struggling with this battle. Today I'm a good boy because I read my Bible and I prayed and I was obedient to my parents. Tomorrow, I'm not able to do that, so God must hate me today. So it's like, he offers me salvation, then he takes it back, and when I'm good enough, he gives it back to me. So that's kind of
like Daisy theology.
Yes,
Right? He loves
yes.
me, he loves me not. He loves me, he loves
Exactly.
me not. Yeah.
So that was the kind of the environment I grew up. And I think in general, I'm trying to be gracious, that's kind of the predominant view in many evangelical churches or churches that profess to be holding on to the evangelical theology. And that's the kind of the environment we saw. So when I came to the Bible college, I found out the gospel of grace. Somebody was preaching through the book of Romans, and I became a Christian there. It was an Australian minister, actually, who was preaching in our chapel services. And that was like liberating. Then started reading Calvin for the first time in my life. And the whole idea of justification by faith, that's when it hit me very hard, because then I was very much exposed to my own, what really I was. So the idea of total depravity, that how much sinful I was and how much God is gracious and what Christ has done, that was liberating. So my approach was, I want to go and preach this gospel, because this has been missing in the form of Christianity I was. So that basically kind of summarized my whole approach to justification, and that changed the course of my life and how I viewed Christianity. At the college, we found that this is kind of one of the founding doctrines of Christian faith, or should be. So, I mean, it's the gospel, as Spurgeon says, justification is the gospel, or Calvinism is the gospel. He defines it like that. But I think it plays a very key role. In my experience, people who have become Christians from other faith, you see a general pattern. They come to a point when they're very tired of performing. Yeah. They are very tired of fulfilling rituals. They feel empty. They're not sure what's going to happen to them when they die. And when they find the gospel of grace, the idea of that there is a righteous God who's pure and absolutely holy, and we cannot please him through our any best efforts that we can. But then he loves us not because we are worthy of love, but he loves us because he's love. And he shows his love to us through his son Jesus Christ, and how Christ comes to this world to be with us, to die for our sins, and he offers this free gift of salvation. So that is like, that changes your approach to life. Then you approach good works, and you approach Christianity, you approach the Ten Commandments, the moral law, with a very different mindset. You feel secured.
In view of God's mercy.
Yes, and you feel secured. I think the assurance of salvation is something that really generates real love for God, that you want to obey God because you love him, as Jesus says. If you love me, you will obey my commandments, rather than you are scared of God, because that's the culture we live in, where gods are portrayed as scary. So if you don't perform enough, a God will be displeased with you, and then you might face some sort of negative consequence, which might affect your salvation. So people are always struggling. But that's not just within, let's say, in other religions. That's in the church. So
it's the natural religion of the fallen heart, right?
It's very much like we are all Pharisees by nature, in one way. And there is a Pharisee in all of us. And we are always trying to perform and achieve.
Justify ourselves.
So that's a key need in churches, even across theological institutions. So like the conference here, which basically touched upon that, we were very happy. But you could also see that we have scholars who come from different backgrounds, presenting different views on how they approach justification. And again, in the Indian context, there is kind of a dichotomy made in general, that the idea of justification is coming from the Western world. So it's very abstract understanding of justification, whereas the Eastern idea or the Asian idea or the South Asian idea is more relational, community-oriented. So what I really enjoyed, I think in one of your papers, and I think a few other papers, the idea of combining justification with sanctification. So there is the forensic, declarative understanding of justification, but there is also a transformative understanding of justification, and especially the last paper, which basically looked at how it can affect the communities and relationships. So the sociological implication of justification. So it's not just a doctrine which is sitting, in a bookshelf, and we get excited about it and feel happy and secured, but it actually pushes you to go out in the world, connect with the world, talk to people about this God who has justified us, based upon Christ's righteousness, but who also expects us to break all these cultural barriers, caste barriers, and connect with people and bring this good news to them. So this was the blessing of this, I would say, conference, just to hear some papers talking about that aspect.
Yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about kind of the ordering of kind of faith and works, not as a earning of salvation, but in honor and worship, having been justified by faith alone. What is that kind of the sense in the church? Churches, I know, are going to be broad in perspective, but there's going to be a diversity of churches with different views. But if you grew up kind of thinking this, it's still going to be there. It's in churches all over the world. But tell us what that's like in church life and culture. Are there movements of kind of by grace alone, through faith alone, or is it affecting the worship and the preaching in the churches as people become more aware of and understanding of their doctrine?
Yeah, very good question. I think I would probably talk about three things here. One is, when I was growing up, we didn't hear of justification by faith alone, or the gospel of grace, much in the church background that I come from, which was kind of a uniting church. It was a union of the Anglicans, the Lutherans, and some Presbyterians coming together to form a new denomination. So they were very traditional, very ritualistic in many ways, or liturgical, you can say, but there was no gospel clearly explained to people. Part of the reason that we have observed as a theological community, especially at the college, is theological institutions play a very important role in training next generation leaders. If the theological educators are not themselves clear on justification, they're going to impact a lot of people in a country with 1.4 billion people. So if you don't train good pastors who understand justification by faith alone, who are grounded and secured in Christ alone, this is going to impact their preaching, their teaching, their pastoral care, pretty much everything. On an average, if you evaluate, and again, I'm thinking of majority of the churches in northern part of India, because that's the area I grew up. But even if you consider the other parts of India, the justification by faith alone is not a popular doctrine, is not a popular idea. Although people do talk about justification, but then it's not how the reformers have talked about.
Your cooperation with...
There is an element of culture or the religious background of our country.
If you do this...
It comes in different forms. For example, so the Lent season, you got to fast, you got to do something to make God favorable towards you. So all these...
Equivalent to Ramadan or one of the Hindu feasts.
Something like that. And then same thing with giving to God, same thing even participating in ministry. So all these good things that Christians try to do, I think there's a danger of the element of mixing it with work righteousness. That I'm doing these things because I'm expecting something from God, and if I've done it, God owes me something. So that is a consistent struggle, and so these are like legalistic tendencies you will find.
Christian karma.
Yes, it's Christianized in different ways. So a lot of religious practices, there are holy days within some churches. There are practices and traditions and rituals which are put at the level of the gospel. There is a guilt-driven piety rather than love-driven piety. So religious practices, reading of the scriptures, for example, spending time in prayer, organizing prayer meetings, overnight prayer groups, or chain prayers, or Bible reading groups. Now, these are all wonderful things. But then when you talk to people, not many will be able to articulate very clearly why are they doing this. That's because we love Jesus and we want to be more like him, yes. But not because we are trying to earn some sort of grounding for ourselves. So that's kind of the general atmosphere you will find it. Good thing is there is a kind of a resurgence or introduction to reform faith within India. So we see it now emerging in certain part of India. So there are groups who are bringing this, and of course it's coming mostly from America or from England or a little bit from probably Australia, but a lot from the US, kind of the idea of the Reformed faith coming out. And there are groups now very active online, on social media, who are running kind of courses, are actively producing YouTube videos, both in English, but also more in the local dialects.
That's wonderful.
So I'm part of one of them just recently, and you could see that yes, it's affecting people. So
younger people especially?
Younger people. So it's mostly the younger people, and these are the ones who are like in the corporate world, in the education department. So I think the literature is very easily available. So that's the blessing of. So people can read more online. They can listen to somebody like you or somebody overseas sitting, and you can learn from them. So like just for example, R.C. Sproul's videos made a big impact upon many people in some of the circles that I'm associated with. They've been amazed by this whole idea of justification by faith. So that's a good part happening. But there's a long way to go as well. The third part is, I would say, that theological institutions, that they are now more intentional about, at least some of them, in seeing the urgency that yes, evangelism is important, but I think we need to preach sound theology.
You need the right evangel.
Exactly. So there was a time in India where we were more concerned about evangelizing, more people coming to know Jesus. But I think a lot of people are now recognizing the urgency of faithfully reading and understanding the Bible, so that the form of Christianity that goes out to people who do not know Jesus, they do not identify this form of Christianity with other religions, which are very much work-based driven. And I think that's a good thing happening. But there are not many institutions like that. As I said, there are very limited ones here and there. A growth that we see is also of the prosperity theology, is especially northern part of India and southern part of India. We have a massive number of televangelists now operating. Also, they are attacking Calvinism and Reformed Christianity. So it's because now they are also aware of it, because Reformed theology encounters prosperity gospel and legalistic tendencies. And prosperity gospel is extremely popular in India. Of course, because of the economic situation of our country, people find it very promising. People are more attracted towards that.
I've heard that even when Benny Hinn comes over, Hindus come out in great numbers.
Yes, but like Benny Hinn is like long time ago. But we have like now locals who are like new Benny Hinns of India. So, and they have the gatherings of like millions of people.
Including Hindus as well as...
Yes, many of them. So the idea of, okay, come to God, He will do something for you. Jesus is going to heal you. Jesus is going to get you a job. Jesus is going to heal all your diseases. Jesus is going to make all your problems disappear. That's the form of Christianity, or understanding of Christianity is going out. So...
Which sets people up for such wrong motivations at best.
Yeah.
Or total despair and then being jaded and let down.
It's doing more damage to Christianity, because then you have to undo the damage.
Yeah, that's not what we believe. You have to...
Before you can then present the
What
real
we do
Christianity.
believe, yeah.
So that's... So I would say like the three areas, but there are encouragements by God's grace. You do see people more aware, more educated. And I think that's because of the global connections now we have. Even like conferences like this, because I hear theologians coming from southern part of India, of let's say from northeastern part of India, and you get to hear from them what is happening in their part of the country there.
It's a big country.
Yes, it is a big country, yeah.
Well, it's really great to have you all these years that you've been coming and even presenting, I think it was last year? Or
Year before last
year.
year.
Before,
yeah.
On the Living God.
I missed last year, yeah.
Yeah, and really appreciate your insights and your contribution to this thing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, and thank you for having us. Yeah.